Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are discussing the events of World War II and the consequences for the Polish nation. We are in the Ochota district of Warsaw, right in front of the monument dedicated to the soldiers who held up the Germans for 19 days on September 1939. The historian, Dr. Krzysztof Jabłonka, will guide us through this turbulent time in Polish history. On September the 1st, 1939, Germany attacked Poland, and I was wondering if you can tell me how the initial clash looked like.
Pamiętajmy, że granica Polski z Niemcami była płonącą granicą co najmniej od końca 1938 roku.
Let us remember that the Polish border with Germany had been a burning point at least since the end of 1938. German provocations were happening all the time. They were intentional, while Poles did their best not to be provoked by the Germans. Even as they saw the subversive troops approaching the Polish border from Germany, they would not attack first. It was only when the border was breached that Polish troops were obliged to react. Such a super provocation, which was supposed to justify the attack on Poland in the eyes of the German society, was the famous Gliwice provocation.
Zawiera ona dwa elementy. Pierwsze to użycie jeńców czy więźniów niemieckich, a więc rodowitych Niemców, jako tak zwane sardynki.
It consisted of two elements. The first was the use of German prisoners, native Germans, as so-called sardines. That meant they were people to be killed, dressed up in Polish uniforms and ordered to attack a radio station through which those specially prepared people, speaking in broken Polish, were to announce the outbreak of the 4th Silesian Uprising, calling on the Polish population via the radio to take up arms against Germany.
Polskę, gdyż Niemcy nie mogą już znieść takich właśnie prowokacji.
Of course, the reaction to that was to be an invasion on Poland, because the Germans could no longer stand such provocations. As there was a lack of Polish provocation, the Germans decided to replace Poles in this scenario. And the second element, unforeseen by German propagandists, was the fact that when reading aloud the lands which the Poles allegedly wanted to recover, the border on Nysa and Odra rivers were mentioned.
I ta granica stała się realna w 1945. Jakby wywróżono sobie samemu przyszłą granicę.
And this border became a reality in 1945, as if the future border had been marked out for itself. In this way, it can be said that a well-deserved punishment met the war-provoking Germans. On September 1st, 1939, saboteurs were the first to violate the border and start warfare. Between 12 o'clock at night, on the 1st of September, and 4:45, which was the time of the attack set by Hitler, they crossed the border in various places, locating themselves at the back of numerous bridges and tunnels to shoot those Poles who would defend the country in the back. They did that so that Poles would not have the time to blow up the bridges or destroy the tunnels. These saboteurs did indeed reveal themselves in many places. Fortunately, Poles also used the trap, and by sending the first units, they sent the second ones behind them, and the Germans were trapped, usually dying immediately.
Wysyłając pierwsze oddziały, za nimi wysłali drugie i Niemcy dostali się w krzyżowy ogień, najczęściej ginąc od razu. Atak wyznaczony był na godzinę 4:45.
The attack was scheduled for 4:45, but the weather was great that day. It was sunrise at the time. Let's remember that in Poland it was 5:45, there was a time difference. Planes taking off from field airports were so close to the borders that the first wave of bombing planes arrived over the city of Wieluń 5 minutes too early. Bombs were dropped on a defenseless city, which was also known to have neither military facilities nor the army stationed there. The city was destroyed in almost 80% and became the first victim of the Second World War. Exactly at 4:45 German time, the commander of the armored ship Schleswig-Holstein issued the order "fire", and all barrels fired towards the Polish transshipment facility on Westerplatte, which means Western Plain, on the port of Gdańsk. A 7 days fair battle began, in which the Poles performed a miracle.
Rozpoczęła się 7-dniowa zażarta walka, w której Polacy dokonali cudu. 100 60 żołnierzami.
160 soldiers defended themselves against 6,000 German soldiers. Eventually, when Westerplatte had to capitulate on September the 7th, German commanders saluted in proof of the courage shown by Poles, and the German general Brauchnitt gave a saber to the Polish commander, Captain Sucharski, as proof of respect for him for such heroic defense. The hidden hero of this battle was Franciszek Dąbrowski, who at the time of serious illness of the commander took over the command and extended the defense by 6 days. It is worth mentioning that, according to Polish plans, Westerplatte was to defend itself for only 24 hours. It was to surrender as early as September 2nd. Meanwhile, it surrendered at the end of September 7th, 1939.
Miało się bronić tylko dobę, 24 godziny. Miało skapitulować już 2 września. Skapitulowało pod koniec 7 września.
It was the first spectacular defense, followed by about 80 border posts, of which the most outstanding was the defense of Hungarian Hill, or Węgierska Górka, the defense of God's Mountain, or Boża Góra, in Silesia, and finally the defense of the Bory Tucholskie, and the famous 4-day defense of Mława, which fell only because that year the marshes dried up in Mazuria.
Bagna wokół Mazur.
But Poland wasn't only attacked from the west. On September 17th, the Soviet Red Army also invaded Poland. And I was wondering if you can tell me how the world reacted to that incident.
Pamiętajmy, że wojnę poprzedził układ Ribbentrop-Mołotow.
Let us remember that the war was preceded by the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, in which a secret protocol clearly stated that the Russians had committed themselves to invade Poland at about the same time with a slight delay. Stalin waited for quite a long time until he learned what the results of the Abbeville arrangements were, that the Poles would be left alone, that there would be no war between France and Germany, at least not immediately. Therefore, it was only on September 16th that he gave the order to his army at 3:15 September 17th to cross the border at all points. More than 500,000 army poured in from the east, destroying every point of resistance, and it must be said that the Polish Border Protection Corps resisted heroically, often alone. To this day, for example, we do not know what happened to the defenders of Łóniec, a fortress in Polesia, which was completely destroyed by the Bolsheviks, and any trace of it was eradicated from history.
Zaginął. Bardzo poważne zarzuty, również Polacy, przeciwnicy rządzących w Polsce Piłsudczyków, stawiali polskiemu prezydentowi,
Those Poles who were opposed to the Piłsudski rulers in Poland also very seriously accused the Polish president, the head of the armed forces, as well as Marshal Rydz-Śmigły and the Polish government of abandoning Poland and crossing the border with Romania. Meanwhile, the truth is exactly the opposite. The Polish government did indeed evacuate east, as German forces proceeded from the west, and already near Krzemieniec, where the famous high school was located, the Soviet ambassador, on the pretext of receiving some directives, withdrew abroad to the Soviet border, which gave thought that aggression was approaching. Eventually, the government, together with the diplomatic corps, moved to the further southeast point of Poland, to the town of Kuty on Cheremos River. There he intended to continue until the arrival of enemy troops. But that very day, much after the aggression, in the evening came the disturbing news from the Romanians that the Soviet army was gathering on the border of the Dniester River, that they could cross it at any time, and from the other side, from the Romanian side, and take the Polish government captive. At that time, we were aware that both the President, the Prime Minister, all the ministers and the Commander-in-Chief, Rydz-Śmigły, were facing a death similar to that which would happen to soldiers in Katyń. In the light of this news and the sharp reactions of Polish military, the government decided after the last meeting at 5 p.m., after the aggression, to leave Poland.
Reakcje polskich wojskowych rząd postanowił po ostatnim posiedzeniu o godzinie 17 wieczór, już po agresji, opuścić teren Polski.
And indeed, a cavalcade of Polish cars with diplomats and ministers crossed the border bridge over the Cheremos River. The commander-in-chief remained. He crossed the bridge several times. Romanians did not notice his presence on their territory. Finally, he returned to Poland, sending the last messages from the radio station placed there to the other units so that they would cease war operations with the Soviets. He began with the words, "Don't fight with the Soviets. Withdraw unless they start engaging with us." It wasn't until 3:30, September 18th, that is on the second day of the war with the Soviets, that he finally crossed the border and was interned by the Romanian authorities because he sent one more message from Romania, which violated the convention concluded with them.
Z terenu Rumunii nadał jeszcze jeden komunikat, a tym naruszył konwencję.
It can be said briefly that Poles have used all their available possibilities. The Romanians beautifully described a moment when the Polish army crossed the bridge, taking a handful of Polish soil with them to be buried under this handful of Polish soil if they had to die in exile. Everyone also confirms that the Polish army crossed the bridge in a parade of steps, singing the last independence song, "Poland is not yet lost."
Defiladowym krokiem przekroczyło ten most, śpiewając ostatnią pieśń niepodległą. Jeszcze Polska nie zginęła.
As we have seen today, the Second World War had devastating consequences for Poland. Despite the country's best effort to fend off the German aggressors, Poland was occupied first by the Germans and then the Soviet Union until 1989. That's it for today. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.